Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started now. If you could please take a seat. Feel free to get up and grab any coffee or pastries along the sides. There's 2 tables here. My name is Genevieve Zazadi. I work for Contra Costa County Behavioral Health Services under the Mental Health Services Act, and this is my colleague Jennifer Bergerman. And today we're here for the Suicide Prevention Community Forum. We'd like to welcome all for coming, spending your time here today. We also want to just do a quick check-in. If anybody speaks Spanish, hay alguien que solamente habla español, si necesita servicios de traducción, por favor déjeme saber. O no? Okay. No? Okay. So we would like to just take a quick moment here to point out that we have bathrooms out the lobby here to your left. The bathrooms are out here. We also have a wellness room in case anybody needs to step away anytime during the event with some water bottles and just a space to take a break. It's room 102. And we would like to also thank just all of the volunteers that are here today to provide your support to the forum, as well as all of the resource tables that took their time to be here and support the forum today. We would like to just do a quick grounding activity before we start, and just kind of take some moments to turn to your neighbor and then share maybe what's brought you to today's forum, as well as maybe what you would like to gain out of today's forum. Spend a few moments, and we could do that now. Yeah, where's our translator? She needs translation? Where is our translator? Maybe check in with Audrey. There's also a Spanish folder.
Okay, so.
Do you have any staff that might be able to support until then? Okay. Yeah, moving along. All right, everyone, we're gonna go ahead and reconvene now. We'd like to go ahead and just cover our agenda for today. And this is the plan here. We're gonna take some time later today to do, we're going to you're going to hear from a suicide loss survivor, as well as some resource and information from the Contra Costa Crisis Center, some data sharing from Contra Costa County Behavioral Health Services in regards to suicidality rates and information in Contra Costa County. We will have small group discussions, a lunch built in, and then at the end we will also be prioritizing service needs, voting, as well as gathering some input through input and evaluation forms. I'd like to take a moment to invite Supervisor Candace Anderson to just share some words here. She's here supporting us. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's really an honor to be here with each of you. I'm Contra Costa County Supervisor Candace Anderson, representing this end of Contra Costa, and I represent the cities of San Ramon, Danville, Alamo, corner of Walnut Creek, Lafayette, Moraga, and Orinda. The needs in my end of the county are just the same as the needs all over the county. My mom passed away about 2 months ago, and so I've spent a lot of time going back home to Hawaii, helping my father, going through a lot of files and boxes of my mother. She had a PhD in American Studies. She loved to clip articles and put them in file folders. And as I was going through many of her bins of papers, I came across a newspaper clipping she had clipped back in 1979. It was the obituary of Mark Becker. I first met Mark in kindergarten, and Mark and I went to Punahou School in Honolulu from K all the way through 12th grade. I remember going to Mark's birthday party in the first grade. His grandparents had a beautiful ranch, and I remember dressing up as a cowgirl in my turquoise cowgirl outfit and riding the ponies with his grandfather helping out. And as we continued through school, Mark was kind of popular, hung out with the jocks. He had the same friends that he had started out with kindergarten. I got stuck in what I call the orchestra schedule. My mother was a musician, I was a violinist, and so when you're in the orchestra schedule, you're with all the other orchestra people, and you sort of go on a different track. And so watching Mark from afar, he seemed to have it all. He had great friends. In high school, unfortunately, his mom, Betsy, died. She had a courageous fight with breast cancer. She had been a good friend of my mom's. And while that appeared from a distance to affect him, you still saw the wrestler, the football player, doing well. 1979, a year after he graduated from high school, Mark took his life. I don't know the reasons, I don't know what was happening, but it was a very different era. Now let's fast forward about 30 years later. At the time, I was the vice mayor of Danville. I coincidentally was back in Hawaii celebrating at that time my mom's 80th birthday. And I got one of those calls I never wanted to get. It was from the Danville police chief telling me that one of the young women in our community, high school student, was missing. And as they had done research on her computer, it appeared that she had been researching suicide. She'd been researching how to get to the Golden Gate Bridge. And sure enough, as they were able to track the footage of the Golden Gate Bridge, they could see she took Bart to the Golden Gate Bridge. They saw her right up to the bridge. She never came back. Her body was never found. This was a traumatic experience for our entire community. She had sat just a few rows behind in math class from one of my children. She had gone to the same schools as my kids. She had had the same opportunities as my kids. But along the way, she had battled depression and other issues that led to her taking her life. This week, I got a letter from a mother in Canyon. I don't know if everyone knows where Canyon is. It's this wonderful community just on the other side of Moraga, in between Moraga and Oakland. And it was a mother imploring to me. She said, I'm watching these horrific acts of violence in our community. My two boys, who are now adults, went to Canyon Elementary School. While there, they were taught empathy. They were taught kindness. They don't have feelings of violence. They have feelings of selflessness toward others. Why can't we just pull together more people to teach empathy and kindness? I'm grateful as a community that that's something we are doing. It's something that we are taking a much greater charge. And as I've been involved in various programs, whether they're related to horrific violence such as the Sandy Hook Project, where we're starting to recognize that at all ages, our children can be taught to be a little kinder, to be a little more empathetic, to watch out for someone, to see the signs of someone in trouble that they might be able to help them. I've been a little bit involved with the Directing Change suicide prevention video productions, and I've seen there the fabulous content created by our high school students to share with one another, to destigmatize mental illness issues, to destigmatize the need that people have to receive assistance, to cry out for help, and have someone listen and not judge them, but be there as their friend. I look at the work we have in Contra Costa with our crisis centers, with the numerous CVOs that are here today that are tirelessly working, looking for the individual who might appear superficially to be doing well, but through one little comment they might make to a teacher or to a friend, to a doctor, to a family member, we know that they need some additional support, some additional help. I'm grateful that we're working multi-ethnically. In my end of the county, we've started doing the Chipao project from Stanford University, which is to encourage parents to understand the stress they may be putting on their children as they have these expectations for them to be as successful as they were. We're trying to, once again, help each individual understand that they matter, that the expectations others might have for them might not be the ones they have for themselves, helping them so that they don't hurt so much inside, helping them so that they can believe that there are many ways to relieve the pain they're feeling, and they do not need to resort to taking their own life. I want to thank each of you for being here. I want to thank each of you for caring, for devoting your careers to helping so many who are desperately in need, and I'm honored to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also going to take some moments here to go through your folders that you all have received. If you didn't get one, you can go out to the registration table here and pick one up. But our folders here have your agenda, which is the first page, and then you'll have an input and evaluation form, the blue form, which has one side for input, the other side for an evaluation. If you can make sure you fill out at least the evaluation form and then return those before you leave. You can leave them out on the table or we can collect them here later. We also have 2 calendars in there. One is for September, the other one is for October, and it's just of the various mental health, behavioral health services meetings that we have within our system under Contra Costa County. So there's the Mental Health Commission, CPAW, Consolidated Planning Advisory Work Group, Systems of Care, Children's, Teens, and Young Adults. And we invite anyone that's interested in any of the various topics that are shared here to attend those meetings. You're more than welcome to attend their open community meetings. And then our center folder here has this resource booklet, which is a service directory of various resources that are funded through the Mental Health Services Act in Contra Costa County. It's divided up where the first half is for children and then the second half is for adults. And so this one specifically is for Central County, but they pretty much all have the same information, except we organize it to where Central County will be the first information that'll be offered, and then towards the end we'll have other resources that are in East Contra Costa County or West Contra Costa County. We also have the CPAW brochure, which is here. I'm going to go over that a little later. And then you'll have these red dots as well that are in your folder. If you don't have them, you can let us know. Somebody at the registration table can get you some, but those will be used later for voting, so please keep those. If you have to leave early for whatever reason, you can check in with the registration table. We're actually going to be doing voting outside a little later. And then the last packets are on the right-hand side here, all of the various slides from today. You'll have the presentation that we're going over right now. Later on, we're going to have some information on data on suicide in Contra Costa County, as well as our presenter, Graham Wiseman, later, and then the Contra Costa Crisis Center. So all of the slides that will be presented are also in here.
Good morning, everyone. Let's see here. Thanks again for being here. My name is Jennifer Brueggemann. I work with the MHSA team. Thank you, Supervisor Anderson, for kicking off our event today. We're really excited to host this forum. I'm just going to start, before we move into the presenters. Oh, can you not hear me? Okay, sorry. We're working on getting the volume turned up, but in the meantime, I'm going to talk as loud as I can. So I'm just going to provide a little bit of background on the MHSA. Anyone who's been to one of these forums before has probably heard this spiel, so bear with me. So the Mental Health Services Act, also known as Prop 63, was put on the ballot in November 2004, and California voters said yes to this measure. This is basically a millionaire's tax. So anyone in our state making over $1 million a year pays a 1% tax that goes into a statewide fund to enhance mental health services throughout the state. Not to replace existing services, but to really enhance what's already there and to ultimately transform the way we deliver public mental health services throughout our county and throughout our state. So there's kind of some guiding principles around the MHSA, and those are that services are to be consumer and family focused, They are to be based in the community. They are to be culturally relevant and integrated with other services, and also focused on wellness and recovery. So the MHSA also requires that we do a 3-year program and expenditure plan, and this is kind of the grand master plan that has every program that MHSA funds. All the dollar amounts are accounted for. There's a description of every program and every service, every category. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But this 3-year plan is really driven by this process that we're engaged in here today, this community program planning process and the forum. These are public dollars, so your input is very important in terms of guiding how the services are developed. So. Okay. All right. So the 3-year plan, this is something that gets approved by the Board of Supervisors. We are currently at the tail end of the 2017 to 2020 plan and kind of leaning into the next one. At this point, we have hosted, we do about 3 forums per year. So since we're in our 3rd year, we're estimating we've had over 800 people, clients, family members, service providers participate in this type of event. So thank you. And the information that we gather today is really going to be focused on leaning forward into our next 3-year plan. Okay. Okay, so this just gives you an idea quickly of how the funding, the way that the different components that it kind of breaks down into. MHSA funds over 80 programs and plan elements. The largest category is community services and supports, and this is focused on providing really higher level treatment for children and adults throughout the county. This is programs like the full service partnerships, if folks are familiar with that, FSPs. Next we have prevention and early intervention. So there's over 20 community-based organizations that MHSA helps support around the county that provide all different types of prevention and early intervention services. Next we have innovation, which is time-limited funding that supports new and different patterns of service and unique programming. We have workforce education and training, and we have capital facilities and information technology. So recently this was used to develop an electronic health record and to do some renovation to the Oak Grove facility. Okay, and this is a slide that just gives you an idea of some of the programs that we work with around the county. I'm sure you'll recognize many of these. All right, what do we need from you today? So you're here participating in the forum. Again, we thank you for that. As Jenny mentioned, we're going to ask you to fill out an input form to give us your feedback. Any thoughts that you don't get to share throughout the forum. We're also going to have public comment, and we're going to have some small group discussions where you'll be able to ask questions and share your ideas. So asking you to participate in those breakout sessions. And then towards the end, as you leave, we're going to ask you to take those dots in your folder and vote on your way out. So thank you. All right, so now we're going to move into our next presentation. Here in the county, we've got a suicide prevention committee that meets monthly. If you're interested in finding out more about that, it's on the MHSA website, so I invite you to check that out. This year, we've been tasked with doing a suicide prevention strategic plan. Actually, an update. The last one was done in 2013. So this has involved doing a lot of research, a lot of data, a lot of analysis, and there is no way that we could have done that without the help of, help me welcome, Isla Castleberry.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to present our data that we have mined from the coroner's office. I just wanted to start out by saying that obviously this is a very difficult topic for many people, for me and myself included. And so if you at any point feel overwhelmed, data, there is kind of a safe space outside. I think it's the wellness room 102. So if you just need a break or you don't want to listen to this part on data, feel free to just leave and take a break from this. As I said, my name is Isla Castleberry. I was a planner evaluator with Contra Costa County, and I had the delight of working with Jennifer on suicide data mining from the coroner's office from the last 6 years, from 2012 to 2018. So first we're going to describe the problem of suicide in Contra Costa County. This slide is from California Department of Public Health. This is data that they provide for each county. So I have data from 2011 through 2016. You can see that in the United States, the rate of suicide per 100,000 people has been increasing year over year from 2011 to 2016. In California, you can see about a steady rate for that time period. Some years are higher than others, some years are lower than others. And then for Contra Costa County, you can see that we had a decrease in suicide rates from 2011 to 2015, and then we had a sharp increase from 2015 to 2016. This chart is from Epicenter data, which you can go in and you can put in the data that you want to extract. So if you look at this graph, you can see that generally males die at a higher rate than females, with the largest means of death being firearm, followed by hanging and suffocation, and then poisoning among females is the third highest. But when you look to the next columns, there's hospitalizations self-injury, and this basically means people who committed self-injury, self-harm with the intent of dying, who did not die and were hospitalized. And then there's the emergency room visit, in which people were sent to the emergency room but were not admitted to the hospital. So you can see on these columns that females generally have much higher self-harm rates than males do. Especially if you look at the line that says poisoning, you can see that there's very high rates of poisoning among females and even among males that result in self-injury. Some of them are hospitalized and some are not. And this is Epicenter data again. So next I want to talk about the Healthiest Kids survey. This is a survey that's administered, I think, every other year. But school districts or individual schools have to pay to administer the survey. But the purpose of the survey is to assess school climate and safety, student wellness, and youth resilience. So schools can administer these. They can do 7th grade, 9th grade, 11th grade, and then non-traditional grades. So we looked at the specific question that said, during the past 12 months, did you ever seriously consider attempting suicide? So if we look at this 9th grade graph, you can see that Antioch Unified School District had the highest rate at 25%, followed by Liberty Union High School at 19%, and John Swett Unified School District at 19%. So those are basically means that 1 in 4 students at Antioch Unified School District in the past 12 months had had some sort of suicidal ideation. Moving to the 11th grade, you can see that there's no more data for Antioch Unified, so they did not administer the survey to 11th graders. Neither did John Swett. But you see that the highest rate for 11th graders now is in Martinez Unified School District, followed by followed by Acalanes Union High, and then Mount Diablo Unified School District. And then for non-traditional grades, these are grades that are either makeup grades or someone dropped out and is coming back to high school. Does not include homeschooled students, in case you wanted to know. And for non-traditional grades, Martinez Unified School District had the highest rate at 21%, followed by West Contra Costa Unified at 19%. So just a brief overview of the slides that we just discussed. Essentially, males die by suicide at a higher rate than females. However, there are more attempts for suicide among females than there are among males. The leading cause of death is generally firearm or hanging, And there was an increase, we saw an increase from 2015 to 2016 in Contra Costa County suicide rates. Among the youth survey, I had to cut these slides because I didn't have enough time, but two things stood out in the data. First, that generally female youth have higher suicide ideation rates than males do in their same age group or their same grade. And then also LGBTQ youth have higher rates of suicidal ideation than those who do not identify as LGBTQ youth. So the next part that I want to talk about, this is the data that Jennifer and I actually went to the coroner's office and read all of the data and all the death reports. And we extracted this data either from the death certificate or from the report that was written by the sheriff's deputies. So from 2012 to 2018, we had 566 male deaths and 164 female deaths. Those ages ranged from 11 to 93. The majority of deaths were among Caucasian or white people at 63%, followed by Hispanic at 15%, 11% Asian, and 7% African American or Black. Compared to the county-wide demographic data, about 45% of Contra Costa County is white, while 26% is Hispanic, 15% is Asian, and 9.1% are Black. So you see a little bit more disproportionate representation of white people who died by suicide than the other demographic groups when you compare them to the county-wide demographics. So if you look at this, you can see the trends by year, starting in 2012 to 2018. The lowest death per year being 91 to the highest at 129 in 2016. So I wouldn't say that there's any necessarily particular trend in this data, but you see a variation between 30 people roughly in any given year. So for the next slide, I'm going to talk about the means of death used in deaths around the county. So we had a total of 730 total deaths from 2012 to 2018. And when you look at the graph, you can see the top line is the red line. So the majority of deaths used firearms, between 30 and 45%, except for from 2016 to 2018, hangings and suffocation actually surpassed that of firearm deaths. Overdose deaths, you can see in 2012 and 2013 were higher rate, but then it kind of plateaus and stays kind of similar from 2014 to 2018. And the same for jumping and poisoning others and cut and pierce. Those numbers generally stay pretty stagnant. We don't see a huge variation from year to year. So this slide is the means of death by gender. And what I did was I calculated the percentages based on the total number of deaths for that gender. So among the 566 males that died by suicide, 36%, or I'm sorry, yeah, males, the blue one, 44% were due to firearms, 34 were due to hanging or suffocation. And those are the largest ones, followed by jump and overdose, both at 8%. Among the 164 females that died, you see that the largest percentage is due to overdose at 36%, followed by hanging and suffocation at 29%, and then firearms at 18%. As we look at deaths by age and gender, you can see that the largest number of deaths occurred among males ages 40 to 59, followed by males ages or over the age of 60. This is pretty standard in comparison with other counties, other states, and national averages. We generally see higher rates of suicide among white males and middle-aged males. And this is just a breakdown. I actually included 2011 in this slide to 2018 that looks at the ages as represented by percentages instead of counts. And so you can see that the top line is those ages 60 and above. And I would say that that data is pretty consistent. You see some years that are higher than other years as a percentage, but overall we don't see a ton of change in that demographic group. However, when you look at ages 40 to 59, you can see that 2011, 51% were ages 40 to 59, which is quite a lot of people, is over the majority of people. But then as you look at subsequent years, you can kind of see that blue bar is just kind of shrinking and getting smaller and smaller as you go. And so by 2018, ages 40 to 59 represented 32% of deaths. And you see during this time period, I think a slight increase in those ages 26 to 39. You see that bar kind of getting bigger, it feels like. And then also ages 19 to 25, you see variation from year to year, but generally I feel like that yellow bar is getting a little bit larger as a representation of the total sample. And then the other thing that Jennifer and I looked at were the number of deaths that had some sort of documented illness. So this was not a medical diagnosis, but this was used from like the sheriff's deputies write up their little reports that document some sort of illness. So it can be hearsay, it can be a family member told them, it's not necessarily a medical diagnosis that's showing up in their medical records. But we saw that 74% of people who died had some sort of documented either mental illness or substance use disorder was mentioned in their deaths. And 7% had a documentation of a 5150 hold or multiple 5150 holds. And then 17% had some sort of chronic illness diagnosed or in their death reports rather. So that could be cancer, multiple sclerosis, a whole bunch of different things, but some sort of chronic illness that was affecting their quality of life. And then the last thing I want to talk about for this is veteran deaths. So among veterans, 64% over the age of 60 was the representation of those who died by suicide, followed by 26% that were ages 40 to 59. And the majority of them used firearms as a means of death at 65%, followed by hanging and suffocation at 21%. As you think about veterans, generally, we know that they're a high-risk group, and then also they all have been trained in firearm usage. So it's not surprising to see that they would have higher firearm death rates than maybe the general population. So just some additional things. While firearms in this data, we saw that firearms were generally the leading cause of death, hanging and suffocation has surpassed them in the recent years. And then we see a slight decline in ages 40 to 59 who've died by suicide, while the ages from 0 to 39 years of age have increased from 2012 to 2018. Yeah? I have one more thing, and then you can ask questions. So this is data that was provided by Each My Matters for the number of calls by volume that were sent to the suicide prevention line or either the national one. I think some of them are rerouted to the Contra Costa Crisis Center as well. So you see basically a steady rate of Spanish-speaking calls. And then among veterans and among the general population, you see a spike in calls and help seeking beginning in January 2017. And then this is the calendar year, or the fiscal year 17 to 18, in which we see kind of a variation in the general versus Spanish-speaking and veterans. You see an increase both in September and October, and then May and June of 2018 among the general population. So overall, the summary of findings, there's a lot of them, actually. So I would say that generally Contra Costa County rates are generally on par with the rest of California, but which is actually lower than the national average for suicide deaths among 100,000 people. Those who die by suicide generally tend to be males. They generally tend to be ages 41 to 60, and they generally use firearms or hanging as the means of death. For those who attempt suicide, however, the majority of attempts are among women, and they use poisoning as a means of suicide attempt. Among suicide ideation, those maps at the beginning, when you aggregate all of the data, you see that about 20% of students in all of Contra Costa County school districts that completed the survey, 20% of them had some sort of suicidal ideation in the past 12 months. And then you see that 30% of students responded to the question about chronic depression, and 30% of students would identify with having some form of depression in the last 12 months as well. And then calls for help seeking for Contra Costa County tend to be pretty stable, except for you see an increase in fiscal year 2017 to 2018. All right, questions? Okay, so the question is basically, how did I choose those age ranges as I represented the data for suicide death rates? So yes. So basically, we made a difficult decision as we were deciding how we wanted to present the data. And so TAY for a lot of our services will be ages 15 or 16 up to 26. But we wanted to kind of show that under 18, over 18 age range. So we decided to represent TAY as being ages 19 to 26. And then older adult, for the sake of Contra Costa County services, is anybody over the age of 60, which is why we represented it as 60 plus, kind of as our older adult age group. Mm-hmm. Yes. So we had the whole conversation about how we wanted to kind of slice and dice the data, and so there could be a better way of representing it, but then you get into 1% or 2%, and it's hard to kind of see an increase or a shift in data because the sample size got so small for that age range. Yeah. I don't remember the percentage off the top. Sorry, the question was, do we know the percentage of veteran deaths compared to the total population year over year or year by year? I don't remember those percentages off the top of my head, but if I remember correctly, the total number of veteran deaths was around 70, and the total number of deaths for this time period was 730. So it's probably around 10% each year of deaths are made up of veterans. Yeah. Sure. Okay. So the first question was the difference between poisoning deaths and overdose deaths, because they're represented two different ways in this slideshow. So the beginning of those poisoning deaths, that's Epicenter data, and they just have it all lumped as poisoning. So it could be any sort of chemical or foreign substance ingestion or use in order to try to harm yourself. So that's the Epicenter data, and I don't really have any control over how they slice and dice their data or how they assign those things. For our personal data, when we went to the coroner's office, we used overdose deaths as anything using like a pill or a substance. And the majority of those were prescription drugs. There were some that were illicit drugs, but the majority of them were prescription drug use. And then for our poisoning section, that's a pretty low percent, that was like carbon monoxide, helium tanks, those types of things, or other sort of like pool cleaner ingestions. That's what we categorized as poisoning for that group. And then the second question was, the jump in 2016 deaths compared to 2015. And I have not made an attempt to try to explain that data yet. I'm not entirely sure why we see a jump from during 2016 calendar year. But it's something to think about, and you can hypothesize on your own. But I don't feel like I have enough information for our team and our purposes to really be able to explain why we see an increase in that year. Yeah. Firearm deaths. Did we happen to see any change in legislation that would possibly lead to a decrease in firearm deaths? I am sorry, but I did not do that research, so I'm not entirely sure why we see a decrease in firearm deaths, but that is definitely potentially one cause for why we see a decrease in firearm deaths. Yeah, so on death certificates that are submitted to the state, that's one of the line items that deputies have to fill out. And so there are sometimes where it's unknown. Well, they'll put unknown, but it's like yes, no, or unknown. So the number of veteran deaths might be like 5 to 10 people higher because that was about the number of unknowns that were marked. It might be underrepresented a little bit, but if it is, it's maybe 1 or 2 percentage points underrepresented. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question was looking back at the maps that show teen suicidal ideation, if we'd done any research to kind of explain particular reasons that might occur. And sorry, no, we haven't had time to really dissect that data and really look to see what could be the causes of suicidal ideation among teenagers or 9th graders, 11th graders, and non-traditional students. But it's definitely something that we can look at. Any other questions? Yeah, so if I understood the question correctly, basically he's asking how do we have any hypothesis or idea of how public suicides and suicides that might be highly publicized, what effect those have on suicide deaths in our county. And so this is one thing that my supervisor brought up, that 13 Reasons Why came out in like March of 2017. And we see an increase in help seeking in March 2017. However, this is not causation. Don't go and spread these beliefs that it's definitely 13 Reasons Why that's causing this spike of help seeking. But yes, there is documented evidence that shows that public suicide deaths generally have an influence on people who are already suicidal and their likelihood of attempting suicide. But it doesn't necessarily influence people who are non-suicidal, if that makes sense.
Okay.
The Crisis and Suicide Prevention Lifeline. We answer calls from the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So calls that are coming in that originate locally come to us first. And so through our network, when there's a public suicide or of a celebrity, et cetera, they often will, actually they always give us a heads up to let us know that the call volume, we might be expecting higher call volumes than usual after an event like that. And generally speaking, we do see increases in calls, in contact after something public like that. I don't know how much it's affecting the actual deaths by suicide, but we as a network, it's something that we keep tabs on and try to keep each other in the loop when something like that happens.
Can I also just add one comment onto that? There's also some research around that we're sort of learning more about how the media reports on suicides, and there are things to steer away from in reporting on television and so forth. And one of the things we've kind of learned recently is that the more details that are revealed about a suicide publicly, like through news outlets and that kind of thing, there tends to be more of a copycat effect and higher spikes. So there's definitely more information that we're learning about in terms of how these should be reported publicly. So anyway, just wanted to add that. Thank you so much, Isla. We appreciate you.
Okay, next we're going to invite Graham Wiseman to come up and share his experience.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me well? Good. So, as I was preparing for this talk, I was thinking about the subject matter I should cover, knowing that the audience is pretty much subject matter specialists, and that you've heard a lot of this before. So, I thought, you know what? I'm actually going to talk about what I talk about in schools. I go up and down 580 and 680, and I'm in schools a lot. I talked to about 8,000 students last year about alcohol use, drug use, sexual activity, and self-harm. And when I'm talking to them, there's a specific point in the talk I get to where I'm looking for the heads to pop up. But more importantly, I'm looking for the heads that go down, because I know those are the students that need to hear what I'm saying. So let's talk about a little bit why I talk about this. We're having a little trouble with the slide advancer, so we'll move that ahead. So I'm going to take you to a beach on the coast of Florida. It's 5 in the morning, and there's just wind, some rain, and a lot of sad on my face. And I'm wondering what I missed. I'm wondering what I should have done, what I could have done. As Anthony Robbins says, I was shooting all over myself. It was not a pretty sight. And as I'm standing there, my phone buzzed. And I looked at the phone, quite honestly, upset. Who would be texting me at 5 in the morning? And on this day. And it was from a young lady, someone I'd never met. She said, "Hello, Mr. Wiseman, my name is, and I'm texting you because I heard you speak. And I heard you say, if you find yourself in that deep, dark place, reach out. Reach out and touch. Reach out and get help. Talk to a parent, a coach, a faith leader, someone in your life that's a positive influence. And if you don't have anyone to reach out to me." I'd put my number up. I guess she took a picture. So she was in that deep, dark place. And as we talked through this, just texting back and forth, she shared that she was feeling better. And she decided to hold on. This girl was ready to let go. And by the grace of God, I happened to be standing on the East Coast, because it was 2 in the morning here, with my phone in my pocket to get her text. And I knew then the difference just a few words could make. A few words. Where she heard me speak was Oh, I took a picture here. That's the sunrise. As soon as I finished texting her, I thought, this is a great day, right? We've got someone who's staying with us. But the reason I speak is because of this. My son Colin was one of those statistics we were just learning about. He was a sophomore at Akalani's high school, 18%. Actually, last year was 20% suicide ideation on that campus. So these aren't just numbers. These are handsome young men like this. And I wish you guys could have met him. He was a wonderful, wonderful boy. All right, so I go out, I talk to students, but I also talk to parents because I know that there's more than one leg on a stool to build the support for these kids. So here are the instructions on how to be a parent. Make sure your child's academic, emotional, psychological, mental, spiritual, physical, nutritional, and social needs are met while being careful not to overstimulate. Okay, is this how to raise a child? Anybody here have children? Anybody here know what children look like? All right, this is the right crowd. So I asked my dad, I'm one of 5 kids. I said, Dad, what was your secret to successfully raising 5 beautiful, handsome children like me? He said, don't forget to feed them. Much simpler. All right. So we talked a little bit about the California Healthy Kids Survey. I use that every time I go out and speak. I look up the specific school I'm going to, which is a little scary. Because when we ask that question, when we ask that question, have you been so hopeless or sad for 2 weeks or longer? The state average is 33%. Mount Diablo, 51% of the junior girls say yes. Depressed, not depressed, depressed, not depressed, depressed, not depressed. Is that what school's supposed to be like? Is that what our children are supposed to be like? No, it is not. And when we have a question like what's leading to this spike or why are these kids taking their lives, here's a key clue, right? They're depressed. Suicide ideation in the state is 15.5. Suicide ideation at Akalani's is 20. And I was shocked to see those numbers for Antioch even higher. So we've got some tough statistics we've been looking at. And I hope that as we go through statistics, you can imagine or picture somebody you know or love that's touched by this. So we've got the number one cause of death in college in the United States is accident. Number 2 cause of death is suicide. Number 1 cause of death in high school is accident. Number 2 cause of death is suicide. Number 1 cause of death in middle school is accident. And the number 2 cause of death in middle school is suicide. It's going deeper down. It's affecting younger and younger kids. So when we see that the rates doubled for girls and gone up 30% for boys, the highest rate in 40 years, we start asking ourselves why. What's going on, right? Is it all bad news? No. Over in the United Kingdom, their suicide rate has dropped to the lowest rate in 20 years, down 3%. And by the way, that 3% drop was in 2 years. Any idea what they might be doing over there? Well, there's this handsome young couple. You may have heard of them, William and Kate. They've got a little brother named Harry. And as the foremost family in the United Kingdom, they've decided to come forth and share their mental health struggles. The very public death of their mother. The stress and anxiety of growing up with incredible pressure upon them. That's what these young men and women are sharing now. And as in 2 years, they've made that much impact. So sharing, talking, is having a really positive impact on lowering this rate. We had AB 2246. Everybody know what that is? Anybody not know what that is? A couple people? Okay. So Assembly Bill 2246 mandated that all schools, public schools, have a school safety plan. And part of that is talking about a suicide prevention plan, pre and post. So in the event that there is a death at a school, they know how to respond. Schools are taking notice. And the priority, now this is starting to show up in school dashboards. If you go look at a school's performance, results from the California Healthy Kids Survey are now being put on there, saying it's not just how many kids we got into a four-year college, it's also how many kids have a connection with an adult. I'm going to keep coming back to that because it's very important. So why are kids, what's freaking them out, right? They're being told they need to go to one of these schools to be a success. They need to go, you know what? That's not funny. Somebody left the price tag on USC. My dad is a young man in London, got a full four-year scholarship to Columbia University. Smart guy. He finished that and then went on to Harvard University. Do you think I got a little bit of pressure to go to one of those schools? Who says yes? All right, who thinks I didn't get pressure? Well, the tip-off was I said my dad was a smart guy. I didn't get any pressure. My dad knew he was a smart guy, good enough to go to Columbia and Harvard. He knew I didn't have that in me. That wasn't me. I went off on a different tangent. But a lot of parents still believe this. A lot of kids believe this. I got called down to East Avenue Middle School in Livermore because they had 5 5150s. Middle school, 5 5150s in 1 week. Because the kids had just figured out if they weren't in the right math class in 6th grade, that would bar them from entering Stanford University. Because that couldn't get them on the right track to get into the right pre-algebra class, to get in the right trig class through high school to qualify for honors. Now, I'm not telling my kids that, that's for sure. But somebody's telling them. Now, here's the thing. There's a little startup on the peninsula. You guys may have heard of it. It's called Google. Watch them. They might do good. So Google had said when they were hiring, we're going to hire from these 5 universities only. This is where the best of the best, the smartest of the smart, the cream of the crop, we're going to bring those students in. What Google didn't realize is a university like Stanford turns away 70,000 perfect Stanford students every year. They also graduate some awesome Stanford professors. But those curmudgeon-y old professors that are there now are not dying off fast enough for them to get a job. So they go off to somewhere like University of Kentucky. Well, after a little while, Google was attending these science fairs, and they started to notice that it wasn't MIT or Texas A&M that was winning these science fairs. These guys. They're like, what's going on? Well, these were pretty well-rounded students that are doing a good job and know how to collaborate and work in groups, and they haven't been raised to think that if I go to one of these schools, I'm done. These are kids who realize life is more than that. So, by the way, does anybody want to guess which university now provides the most employees to Google? Anybody know? And no, it's not University of Kentucky. That would be too easy. Any guesses? This is the participatory part. San Jose State, absolutely right. Okay, so these kids are stressed out to get in here. School's the #1 source of stress for students. That surprise anybody? No. Good. You know, they get lots of common symptoms showing up about nervousness, anxiousness, being tired, struggling to get through school. And they're stressed. So is stress good or bad? Who says stress is good? Who says stress is bad? See, I'm talking to the right crowd. You guys already know the answer, don't you? Stress just is. It's how you handle the stress that can lead to the problems. We grew up, evolved around a campfire. And when we sat at that campfire and we hear a rustle in the bushes behind us, it could be either saber-toothed cat, a potential mate, somebody with pizza. You don't know. You turn around and you react to it. That's normal stress. But what our children experience is prolonged chronic stress, where in 6th grade they know if they don't get a perfect score on that math quiz, it's going to affect the rest of their life. Because perception's reality. So this can lead, and I'm going to skip these quickly, this can lead to different types of anxiety disorders, symptoms we see. Now, this one's interesting, and this one gets a lot of parents' attention. When we look at this and we say, what are the signs and symptoms of teens' anxiety? They're doing really well at school in their sporting events. They're perfectionist. They're redoing tasks to get them right. Work, right? They're striving for approval. They do a lot of time on homework. We reward our kids for that. But what are we really rewarding? Are we rewarding this anxious behavior? Are we encouraging them to seek perfection in everything they do? The answer is yes. Okay. And these are signs and symptoms of depression. I'm just going to move on from that. All right, so what's got our kids stressed out? Fear of failure, tougher academics, social pressures. What are the top 5 relievers? Who's heard this before? Eat well, get plenty of rest, and exercise. Do you know why we keep hearing that? Because it works. You can't make any money. There's no pills in there. But eat well, get plenty of rest, and exercise. I drove by a school the other day, and one of the parents was saying, when I was a kid, we used to have these pickup games of baseball and stuff. I'm like, yeah. Look at the school. It was a Saturday morning. It was completely fenced off, chained. Everything was chained off. You couldn't get anywhere near that ball field. So that even that opportunity to go throw a ball around is gone. So that our kids are being coached away from that physical activity. Okay. All right, so who here has heard of President Dan Quayle? There is no President Dan Quayle, right? There was a Vice President Dan Quayle, but what happened to him? Well, he was on the campaign trail, and he was getting 4 or 5 hours sleep a night, and he goes to a school, sits down on the chair. Little Johnny has to spell a very tricky word. Anybody know what that word is? Potato, right. And ex-future President Dan Quayle leans over and says, you need to add an E to that. Well, nobody is going to vote for a guy who can't spell potato. That ended his aspirations. His political career was crushed. So how many hours of sleep was he getting? 4 or 5. Our friends over at Stanford in their sleep center, they studied and they came up with the idea that for every hour of sleep you miss, you drop your IQ 10 points. So if you have an average IQ of 100 and you only slept 5 hours, you've dropped it down to 70. Now you qualify for special ed. Just because you didn't get enough sleep. And that's how our students are going. Anybody know what the average amount of sleep our students get here in San Ramon? Little bit over 6 hours. Little bit over 6. Stanford says they should be getting 9. So they're going to school with an IQ 65 to 75, knowing they have to get into Stanford or their life's over. That is what's going on with our kids. All right, so we're just going to keep going here. We're going to talk a little bit about emotional currency. And again, these are things I'm sharing with parents because I know that parents need to have this information to help their kids. They think it's like that Grease, at the beginning of the movie Grease, with Sandy and Danny are on the beach and everything's great. They don't realize it's the Sandy and Danny going to beach with teen pregnancies, underage drinking, gang use, right, and smoking. So discovering a child's emotional currency is different than it was now. Are you guys familiar with that term, emotional currency? Pretty much? Sure, got a couple of maybes. So what you think is important, is it important to your child? So UCLA did a study, they did it since 1967, and they were asking kids to stack rank the 16 most important things they felt. And what used to come out number 1 was community feeling. It was number 1, number 2, number 2, number 1, and then it dropped to number 11. What raised up to number 1? Fame. So for them, their emotional currency is based on fame, achievement, and popularity. If what you're trying to talk to your child or influence a student or another young person about doesn't make them famous or more popular, you got nothing. Who's this guy? Well, if you can see it over here, 19 years old, he's already made $3.3 million as an esports. What's esports? Playing video games. People pay money to watch him play a video game. A lot of money. So he's a hero. Okay, our next. How about this young lady? Have you been keeping up with her family? Yeah, okay. Is she famous? Abso-stinkin-lutely she's famous. Is she rich? Abso-stinkin-lutely she's rich. A billionaire. A billionaire from lip gloss. That's why your kids are on Instagram. They want to be the next Kylie Jenner. All right, now I'm shifting from, how to connect to your child to some of the things that people say, oh, well, you know what, it's all cell phone's fault, or it's this fault or that fault. So we talked a little bit about pressure. We talked a little bit about what kids think they need to succeed. Now let's talk very briefly about cell phones. Who thinks cell phones are awesome? Who thinks they've got a few problems that we're kind of dealing with? Yeah, okay. All right, so as you know, we've been evolving with them for the past 35,000 years. We'll go on to the next one. And that's given us the ability to successfully coach our children through it. Well, we're not doing a good job. So these facts are from Dr. Twinge's book, iGen. So she's commenting on the rush to drive. So you can see why get a driver's license when mom will drive you. By the way, who knows where they were on their 16th birthday? I was in line at DMV, right? I don't know about you guys. That was freedom. Okay, and so they're not driving. They're not dating because they're losing that ability to actually communicate with people. They're just putting a bunch of declarative statements on a computer screen and sending it off. This is one the parents like. Oh, did we skip one? Is there not one? Next one? Rush to drive? Oh, okay. Well, the other one is less sex. So the kids are having less sex, they're dating less, they're driving less, but here's what they're doing more. They're feeling lonely. Now, when we look at suicide data and stuff, it's kind of a toss-up right now between Lake County and Modoc County. You guys know where Modoc is? Way up, top northeast corner of the state. The ratio for mental health professionals to population is 6,900 to 1. And they're thinking that's a key part of why their suicide rate is highest up in that county. In the United Kingdom, they've declared loneliness as the #1 cause of death. They said you can have cancer, but if you've got friends and support around you, you may last 10, 15 more years. My mother-in-law lasted 30. If you don't have anyone around you, you're probably going to be gone in a year. All right, so what are the big shots doing? What are the smart people in the room doing? What are they telling their kids? You're not only not going to get an iPad, you're not even going to go to school that has an iPad or a computer screen. That's what tech execs are doing. They're sending their children to no-tech schools. When someone asked Steve Jobs what his daughter thought of the iPad, he chuffed and said, she's not getting one of those. All right. We have a local expert in our community, Dr. Richard Freed, and I had the pleasure of hearing him speak about this very topic on what's going on with kids. Some places like France have banned cell phones for students under 16. Province of Ontario just did that. There was a bill knocking around in Sacramento to do that here in California as well. But his study and research shows that the kids are spending about 16 minutes a day actually doing the work they're supposed to be doing on their phones or their computers. Let's see what the next slide is. There we go. So as he looked at this, he took the research, he went back and forth with parents, students, teachers, professional educators, mental health people, and he said, what's really going on here? Is it because of the Barbie colors on the phone? Is it the pretty purple button that makes kids really get addicted to these phones? No, he said it's an addiction to entertainment. If you do something, you get a buzzer, a candy cane, a bright flash of light. You know, when you're playing a video game and you save the princess, get a little dopamine hit. When you play another video game and you steal the car, you get a dopamine hit. Run over the prostitute, get a dopamine hit. That's what these kids are doing. They're getting addicted to the technology. So if this slide is my family, it's my wife on the left, me in the middle, our daughter Nicole. What's ahead of us? Don't know, right? It's just the future. We had no idea our son would go ahead. But as we walk alongside our child, we're not helicoptering over them. We're not mowing down the weeds in front. We're not behind them with a whip and chain saying, get going. But walking alongside the child, being part of their lives, is a huge impact. And that's not just my opinion. There was a study came out in February from University of Michigan. I'm going to go quick. It was published in the Journal of American Medical Association, the Psychiatry. And the study was looking at 463, I'm doing it off the top of my head, youth who had suicide ideation or made a suicide attempt. They split the group in two. One group they did nothing with. The other group, they asked for a caring adult. The child would select a caring adult. And they gave that caring adult minimal training on what to look out for suicide risks. And then they called that caring adult once a week for 3 months, just to see how things were going. So that study went on for quite a few years, and at the end of that, they found that the results were, go one more. The results were, of those 448 adolescents who were followed through that study, 1 in 4, knowing that 1 in 4 of high school students struggle with mental health. One more slide. They had reduced the death rate by 660%. That is a phenomenal success. And they did that just by having someone, a caring adult, talk to that child. Where do you find those caring adults? School wellness centers, sometimes as a counselor. Could be someone in the community, faith leader too. All right. So, I'm just going to wrap up briefly and just mention that I say I go out and I talk. I volunteer with many organizations. I'm around quite a bit. And I share this talk with students, with parents, with professionals. Because I firmly believe that talking to the children, talking to these students, kiddos, young people, whatever you want to label them, talking to them is the #1 suicide prevention we can use. Encouraging them to get the help they need from professionals, that all happens because we're talking with them. Okay? We're making a difference. So I also volunteer with NAMI California, Contra Costa, helping people talk about these things. And now I'll just add with something is that all this talking, though, has made me mad. And by mad, I mean making a difference. I know that there's 4 kids here specifically because of conversations. I know that there's more kids than that I don't even see. When I see their heads go down when I'm talking, and I see the tears on their arm, I know I'm connecting. We can all connect. We can all go out and talk to kids in our neighborhood and help, encourage, right? That community support, getting in front of them. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Graham. Excellent. Appreciate you. All right. Excellent. Yeah, we have about 2 or 3 minutes if anyone has any questions for Graham or comments.
Yeah, go ahead. Great. Okay, so the question was, if I got this right, who are those caring adults? Where do we put them in? How do you make that part of a policy for putting into school? And so that's something I've been working on for the past couple years. I actually am working with State Senator Glazer on a mental health awareness license plate. That license plate will fund wellness centers on schools. The definition of a wellness center, in my mind, is something that is adjacent to the counseling center. It's staffed by district employees because there are FERPA and HIPAA discussions that go on. If it becomes a HIPAA discussion, it's really not going to be information they can share with teachers or other caring adults on campus. It's important that the child be able to select their caring adults. 82% of children in crisis go to a teacher, not a counselor, when they're in crisis. So they will pick out who those caring adults are. However, there needs to be a process on campus where children know where to start. And that's what the Wellness Center is providing. It's providing that triage person in the front end who cares enough to say, let's just sit down, let's listen, let's get you out of crisis, and let's find that caring adult. There's a question over here, yes? Well, let's stick with question. I only got a minute or two. Okay, so I'm going to cut you off there if it's okay. So the question is, is it just cell phones? No, well, there's a lot that goes on with a cell phone, right? They're the social connection, they're people's identity, right? I had a daughter, she had to have the latest iPhone. I argued vehemently against it, but then I found out that she was a captain of her sports team, and they had very critical decisions to make, if to wear the blue bow or the white bow, wear the high pony or the light. This is serious stuff, don't make fun of me. But if that group discussion started and then an iPhone responded, boom, it dropped all the Android phones off the discussion. So she was suddenly less than. And that had an effect on her. So, yes, there's all kinds of stuff goes on with that cell phone. Question? Great question. So the question was, do I just focus on a specific school district or two? No, I do not. So this past week, I've been in Mount Diablo. I was at Byron School District. I'm at Akalani School District tomorrow. And I did a lot of great work with San Ramon School District. Really been thrilled with their participation. And we're looking forward to going out to West County. So all over. If invited, yeah. Okay, I tell you what, let's take this offline. You can grab me in the back there and we'll talk more. Is there any other? Yes. Okay, that's a good question. Is there any pending legislation to train family members to be a caring adult? And the answer is nothing I'm aware of. But there are systems in place throughout the county. NAMI Contra Costa, we provide all kinds of free information and courses on how to be that caring adult, how to be the representative of the loved one that's struggling with a mental health issue. And there's, you can even just start by calling 211. That would help get you on the right path. But there's nothing, as far as I know, good legislation. All right, I think I have
All right.
room for one more question, if there's any. Well, thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Graham, so much. Okay. While people are kind of getting settled back in, I'm just going to go ahead and start this next introduction. I think everyone is quite familiar with the Crisis Center, the Contra Costa Crisis Center. Hopefully by the end of today, you'll learn even more about all of the wonderful services that they provide. They're really kind of the backbone of crisis services in our community. Please help me welcome the Executive Director of the Contra Costa Crisis Center, Tamara.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks to everybody for coming today. I have to tell you, we've been planning and working together to plan for today and getting just kind of caught up in all the logistics and the planning. There was a moment a little while ago, someone just gave me a big hug because we're part of the call center. And so it really, I have to tell you, it really brought me back to why we're all here together today. And I want to just thank everyone. We're all here committed to helping people stay alive. And I don't want us to forget that that's what we're doing here. And all the statistics and all the information you're going to hear, it's helpful. And it helps us plan, and it helps us figure out ways to work together better. But the reason why we're here is because this is where our heart has brought us. And I want to thank you guys for being here today. I'm going to introduce, actually, I just want to tell you that there was someone had mentioned about, we talk about the contagion after a suicide, especially how in kids or other people are affected about it. I just want to mention that we do a Postvention Program. We call it mobile grief. But we have a team of volunteers and staff members that go out to schools and community organizations and businesses following a suicide or unexpected loss. And we do that free, and we send people out to try to bring some structure to whoever, the administrators or the faculty or whatever situation may be, to give them some, help in sorting through that event. And so those are, sadly last year we went out to, I think we went out a dozen times last year, most of those schools, and some of you may be from those districts. And so we are proud to be available to everybody in the room in those types of situations. Call 211 and ask us. We often get the calls on the weekends about something that's happened, and by Monday morning we have a team there. So we're happy to do that. We're proud to do that. And we're always looking for volunteers for our call center. There's a 60-hour training where you learn how to answer calls for the information referral hotline and also for crisis and suicide prevention. Last year we answered about 70,000 calls. So for those of you that are referring folks to us, thank you. Right now I want to introduce Scott Chavez. He's our lead training and outreach, and he is going to take us through the next step. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you that we can be a part of this forum here today. We wanted to start off and give an introduction, a further introduction and a video introduction to our crisis center. We have this brand new video that was just debuted a few weeks ago, and it will start off powerfully. And so a reminder that we do have, how are we calling it, the wellness room, the care room, and that we're talking about, obviously, difficult topics, and we'll see in the video folks who experience the pain of loss. The first of the folks that we're going to see has lost someone to suicide, her husband, and then we'll see some other losses, just general grief, general loss, not related to suicide. And a little bit about the crisis center itself. This is about 7 minutes, so we'll watch this now.
I lost my husband to suicide. I came home from work and my husband had hung himself in our garage. When I found my husband, I was like in shock, but I know that I had to do something quickly. And I was talking to the 911 person, and they told me that I had to cut him down. And so I got the kitchen scissors, and I ran back into the garage, and I cut him down, and I could see him falling. A little bit later, I found the note that he left, and he left a beautiful 8-page letter explaining everything that he was feeling. He really tried not to do it, but he just felt like this dark hole was getting deeper, and he just couldn't see any hope anymore, and he was so sorry to do this to me.
My son Kevin was a real adventurous kid. He was almost 16 years old, and we went on a Boy Scout outing, which we really enjoyed. So the dads were building snow caves, and Kevin and his friends were actually goofing off and doing ski jumps. They've got trick skis. One of the scouts came and said that Kevin had fallen unconscious. And so we raced over, and we ended up having to do mouth-to-mouth and CPR for quite some time before the helicopter could actually land and lend its help to try to keep Kevin alive. Well, unfortunately, Kevin did die that day.
Tanduya, our daughter, she was 27 years old when she was in an auto accident and died in that auto accident. Tanduya was our last child. Brilliant young girl, compassionate.
She would not just buy food for homeless people, she would sit and eat it with them. Jewelry, rings. If somebody said, "Oh, that's so pretty," she would say, "Well, then here, you have it," and give it to them. So she was just a giving soul. I didn't think I could live any longer. And I called the crisis center, and they said, "Oh, we have a group for parents who have lost kids, and it starts on Wednesday," and this was a Monday. So that's really what saved my life.
Suicide's awful. It's ugly. It's forever changing. But what the crisis center did for me is let me know that life could be good again. It was the only place that I could go that everybody got it. Everybody understood. Every single person in that room had lost someone to suicide. I have a very loving family. I have a great community. I'm very fortunate. But people don't understand, and they say things that can be very hurtful.
When we got back to getting back to our normal things and going back to work, you soon realized that, hey, you need help. I really had just hoped that I could go to sleep and then my heart would stop, and then I would be able to be with Kevin. But I also realized that over time that really wasn't the right thing, because we have a purpose in our lives. We absolutely do. By coming to the crisis center and doing the 2 8-week sessions that we did, it was so helpful for us. It certainly didn't mean that after 2 8-week sessions we were all better again, but it was a good starting point.
You definitely cannot do it alone. You need people around you. It's one of those things you cannot get over. You just have to move forward.
You don't know what's ahead when you lose someone to suicide. And the group helped me to learn about emotions that would be coming up, situations that would come up, how to handle it, how to be prepared for it. In the group we laugh, and in the group we cry. And those people you are linked to forever, essentially, because you know their story and they know your story, and it's about as honest and about as vulnerable as you can get.
To learning that not only did we have other people that were having the same tragedy that we did, but that we will find ways to laugh again, which of course we do now, to bring new memories, to help other people. You know, I'm able now to just take time to think of Kevin a little bit, and then to be able to go on and do the things that I do in my life. And I've learned how to find purpose in life.
Hello. Thank you for your interest in the Contra Costa Crisis Center. I'm Tamara, and I'm the Executive Director. When you hear stories of people, when they share from their heart what they've lost, to be able to be a part of that healing process, it goes beyond work. It becomes part of what I do. We're here to save lives. And with the volunteers and staff members here, we work together every day to try to provide services that are going to help make that happen. As an agency, we had nearly over 5,000 hours of volunteer services last year alone. We do this in lots of ways, taking calls from the people that are most vulnerable in our community, linking them to services and people that are going to help them get what they need to stay safe, to be fed. I'm proud to be part of this agency. Almost 100 people, volunteers alone, just helping us do what we do on a daily basis.
We at the Crisis Center have the privilege of being a part of people's lives in the pain as they have whatever pain is going on and perhaps have thoughts of suicide. And then we have the privileges as well of being with folks after a difficult loss. I suppose that's what it is to be a crisis center. And then you all as well help out in many ways and are a part of this. So we want to look at now an overview of the services. We already got a little bit of that, and you have the materials there in the PowerPoint. And then a very quick 10-minute or so overview, introduction to suicide prevention. And I know Graham mentioned that, and well, I know I've seen some of you all at one training or another. Some of the material is well known to you all. I want to try to highlight a couple things that are a little bit new that might be helpful to us, maybe not new to all of us. So let me start in first, just talking about the services of the Contra Costa Crisis Center. And you all have, of course, the PowerPoints there in your packets. And then also there on your tables are some wallet-sized little pamphlets that we just had printed up, and they just made it in time for this event. And feel free to take one or more, and so you can see them by the colors and that they have information about how to contact us. So what I want to do now is talk about the Crisis Center, the services, and then very quick suicide prevention, language of suicide awareness, myths, how to help someone asking directly about suicide, safety planning, protective factors, all of that before the next part that's on our agenda. So I'm glad that you have the copies there that'll help me to march on through quickly. Our goal, our mission at the Crisis Center, to keep people alive and safe, help them through crises, and provide or connect them with culturally relevant resources in the community. Next slide is an overview of the ways in which we do that. We have the 24-hour crisis lines, the 24-hour 211 info and referral line. Then a part of that is we're a part of Homeless Coordinated Entry. We're also part of Help Me Grow. We have grief counseling, community outreach, and training. We'll learn a little bit more about several of those areas in the upcoming slides. So the crisis lines, our crisis and suicide hotline. Again, I think we all know that now here in Contra Costa, we can simply dial 211. If you and your phone are in Contra Costa and you dial 211, your call, if the system is working, should come to our office in Walnut Creek. And that can be about crisis and suicide and emotional support, also about grief, also about info and referral for services in the community. We'll see more about that in a moment. Again, you can also call. We have the 800 number. People can text in, actually. Believe it or not, we know how all these young people are. We just heard about all those cell phones. So here they can be used to be texting in. Text the word HOPE to the digits of 20121. We do have a grief hotline. Nowadays, all you have to do is dial 211. And then as we've mentioned before, we do answer local calls that come in. That is from local phone numbers that call in to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Those calls are routed to our center first. And then the national line works that if we happen to be busy on other calls, the call will roll to another center, another nearby center, let's say Alameda County. So one thing that was interesting to me when I started as a volunteer and now am on staff is the variety of kinds of calls. I started as a volunteer because I wanted to learn how to respond to folks who had thoughts of suicide. It was scary to me then, and I know well that for many folks, to deal with this topic is challenging and daunting and scary. We're going to learn in 2 seconds or so about, the 15-minute intro about trying to address that. There's much more. It is hard. There's no doubt about it. But so certainly I thought we would be getting suicide-related calls, and we do. Something else that I learned that's very helpful is we get a lot of what we call third-party calls. And that is folks who are concerned about someone else, folks who are concerned about their friend or their relative, and they wonder how to be helpful. We try to coach folks to be helpful. So you all could call in, or anyone you know, if you're concerned about someone, call in and we'll help you to help them. So that's related to suicide. Another category, certainly general crisis or grief, not necessarily related to suicide at all. We take calls like that, and that the caller is in crisis or grieving and could be concerned about a third party. And that is, we get a number of calls from parents or friends of those who and their friends or their relatives might have mental health concerns, and they wonder how to be helpful. So we provide support and lots of referrals to these agencies that are right here with us tabling today, and we hope you can get a look at them. We already heard from NAMI, and there are many others here, so that it's a privilege for us to be able to provide support and then provide referrals. And then continuing support. There are some folks who find it helpful to call us on a regular or an irregular basis. And they can call in anytime, 24 hours a day, and get support from our folks over the phones. Now about 211 info and referral. This is not about emotional crisis, just about info about services in the community. Again, all you got to do is dial 211 and you'll reach us. People can text in, again, texting HOPE to 20121, or go to our online database at 211cc about providing information in time of community disaster, which fortunately we have not had a community-wide disaster here in Contra Costa, and we hope, of course, that we won't. If you were to go to 211cc.org, this is exactly what you'll see, and you can click on the picture or do a search by typing in the words. Grief counseling. We saw several of the folks there in the video talking about their experience of the grief support groups. We have individual counseling, group support for individuals, the individuals or in the group in English and Spanish, trained volunteers, clinical associates, and then Tom mentioned at the beginning of our time here, that is about 10 minutes ago or so, about our grief response team that goes off to the locations where there is an unexpected, very difficult death, perhaps a suicide death, where our folks and others can be there to help in the moment. Outreach and training, we want to put a plug. This is so short. If you want more training, then go to our website and look what the opportunities are, and we'll be happy to help you all out. Then about more outreach and training, I just wanted to mention AFSP, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. They have a table here right next to ours in the back, and they have information there. And one of their activities coming up, well, a couple. One is the Out of the Darkness Walk in Oakley in October. You can look that up with them. And then also they have the International Survivor of Suicide Loss Day. We at the Crisis Center will be a part of that on the Saturday before Thanksgiving, where those who have lost someone to suicide can come together, perhaps for the very first time. And you can go to their website or ours for more information in the days ahead. Outreach materials, we have more cards. These are the older cards with the older colors, and then you have the new cards there on your table. We have posters available as well. All right, we're ready to talk about the difficult topic. Many of us are already familiar, but let's take a look at this. We have the brand new card. Here is where we have something new. We have the steps here, and just so you can see there in the blue, and I invite you to take a card right now and take a look at it. Of course, you can follow it along in your PowerPoint. We've got it in English and Spanish, and we're going to take a look at this. So we want to look for signs, possible signs that someone might have thoughts of suicide. We want to listen for the hints that maybe someone has thoughts of suicide. And then here's the hard part, is asking directly about thoughts of suicide. Expressing care. This is new, and this is new from both at the national level and the state level. I think it's wonderful to just put it out there that it's very valuable, of course, to express care in this difficult moment, and then to reach out and to follow up. We're going to look at each of these steps very briefly in the slides ahead. Language of suicide awareness. As we launch into this topic and suicide prevention, we want to emphasize talking about suicide is helpful. So do we talk about it? Of course, yes. And we want to talk about it in a way that reduces stigma. So how can we do that? We have some proposals up here. I know it's kind of mind-bending, kind of difficult, and we certainly don't get it overnight. Not everyone agrees. You don't have to. It's a suggestion. Why? To be as respectful as possible on this topic of suicide. So, for example, up there we have die by suicide, the phrase die by suicide, rather than the phrase commit suicide. So often in the newspapers or wherever we hear that when they're reporting on it, someone has committed suicide. Well, that's fine. That's the long-standing term. We want to try to change the wording, and that is that someone dies by suicide. Someone has killed him or herself. And why? We want to, whenever we use the word commit something, all the times that I can think of any noun that follows the commit, that is a direct object, commit a crime, commit perjury, commit adultery, commit a sin, commit a robbery. It's all negative. And then there's the phrase commit suicide. Now, I'm not here to promote suicide. I'm only here to take it out of that context of the crime or whatever. Now, it is unfortunate when anyone attempts suicide or dies by suicide. And we want to be respectful, and we want to put this in the public health and mental health arena. So another aspect, maybe you've heard the phrase, I don't hear it as often, but that is they say, oh, someone they attempted suicide and it was a successful suicide attempt. It's like, I cringe now when I hear that. And so in a certain sense, yes, the attempt ended in the death. So you could say by that definition it succeeded, but no, it's not a success. It's certainly not a success for life. So we want to try other wording, and that is perhaps that someone completed suicide or someone died by suicide. And then other aspects to here of how to be respectful that I want to suggest to us. Suicide loss survivor. We've heard from one live here, and then one in the video, and folks who remain alive after the death of someone else by suicide. And to realize that there are unique aspects of that, and we've already heard about that, and I think we know it well. And then as well, suicide attempt survivors. That is those who have attempted suicide and they're still alive. And it's amazing to me the number of people who have attempted suicide and are still alive, and that's great and that's wonderful. And how do I know of so many people who have attempted suicide? It's because they're calling in, and a part of our risk assessment process is to ask, have you attempted suicide in the past? And the answer is yes. In fact, there's a statistic for some of them, and then we talk about that. There's a statistic that for every death by suicide, there are 25 attempts. Now, that doesn't mean that every individual, any one individual, has attempted 25 times, but that means for every death by suicide, that there are 25 other attempts. That's amazing. But it's wonderful that the folks are still alive, and the folks still need support. And we want to provide that in all of our various different ways. All right, so just stats from the Crisis Center. Looking at our own fiscal year just completed, 18-19, the number of calls where we marked, our different folks answering the calls, 2,900 calls related to some degree of suicide, something related to the topic of suicide. We had folks that we rated at low risk, 1,600 of them. Moderate risk, 221, high risk, 53. And then of those where we assisted in initiating a rescue, it was just 50 for that year. But it amazes me the number of folks who do call in, and I think the number is actually higher than that, maybe because folks aren't telling us. Even when we ask, they don't feel comfortable fully answering us. And that's fine. We're there to provide support. All right, these myths, I think we're familiar with these. Let me go through them as quickly as possible. Certainly, I think that we all agree this is a myth. Asking or talking about suicide will give someone the idea to do it. We believe it is good and helpful to raise the topic, initiate the topic, talk about the topic, even with folks, and especially perhaps with folks who have thoughts of suicide. People who attempt suicide want to die. There's nothing you can do. Well, we certainly don't believe that here. But what's interesting to me here is that thought of that people who attempt suicide want to die. When I first heard that, I thought, well, of course they want to die. That's in the word. That's why they attempt it. But it's not that they really want to die. That's not their first goal. Their goal is to end the pain. So if we can help people to end the pain, or to reduce the pain, or to endure the pain, then we can help them related to their thoughts of suicide. Men have the highest rate of suicidal behavior. This was there to be provocative. We're all now experts after listening to Isla and reading there in her PowerPoint that more men die by suicide, but more women attempt suicide. You should ignore people who threaten or attempt suicide for attention. Now, of course, that sounds ridiculous when we hear that, that people who need attention need attention. But one thing I always think of the TSA at the airport. And they have signs there that say, don't joke about bombs. And if you joke about a bomb, they'll pull you aside and interview you for several hours and you'll miss your flight. So also, we who deal with the topic of suicide, that if anyone gives any indication whatsoever, we want to take time with that person. We want to take it off the table so that we don't joke about it. Or even when people do joke about it and then we respond and they say, oh, well, I was just kidding. Can't you take a joke? Well, no, when it comes to life or death, no. Not your life or death. And so if you do have thoughts of suicide, okay, that's fine. Maybe you were kidding. But realize, I just want you to know I'm here. Meaning I, you, whoever. And also this line is here. You can call the national line. You can call locally, dialing 211. Suicide usually occurs without warning. There's a statistic that 80% of the time there's some sign, some indication. Now, even as I say that, that's supposed to be encouraging to us. And that is that if we know the signs, if we know what to look for, what to listen for, and how to ask and how to respond, then we can be helpful. That's the goal. At the same time, we know that any of us here have lost someone to suicide. And I want to be sensitive to that. Anyone, probably most anyone who's lost anyone to suicide, probably deals with guilt and blame. And so I just want to be sensitive. We want to be as helpful as possible, both to those folks who might have thoughts of suicide, as well as to the folks who have lost someone to suicide. So now let's take a look here. How to help someone. Again, this is on your little trifold there. Look, listen, ask, express care, reach out, follow up. Something that's new, that was new to me in terms of spelling it out for the draft statewide, California statewide suicide prevention plan, were a couple steps in here that I like very much. And that is to express care. It's new that it's on the list. And then also the following up. I thought that was great. So let's take a look at these. Look, this is a very brief list. Hopelessness, withdrawing from loved ones, changes in mood or behavior, giving away prized belongings. I was just showing this card to someone yesterday, and she said, gee, I hadn't thought about that before. So here are just some of the ideas, but there's much, much more, and I'd be happy to visit you all and be with you all and provide more training. For verbal clues, people drop hints. Oh, I just can't go on. It'll all be over soon. No one would care if I were gone. Those are on your card. I added a few more here. I'd be better off dead. All of my problems will be over soon. I wish I could just go to sleep and never wake up. Now, these aren't explicit. These aren't obvious. These are invitations to us to ask further. And we're going to see how to do that in just a moment. There might be a tendency to want to debate with folks when someone says, oh, I'd be better off dead. Maybe our first response would be to want to say, no, you wouldn't. Or say, no one would care. Oh, yes, people would care. Where it gets into a debate. I want to invite us to use this as an invitation to ask directly about the possibility of suicide. It's also an invitation to go deeper to the feelings and to empathize and to feel the feelings of loss, the feelings of rejection, the feelings of isolation. And I believe that's where the heart of the matter is and how we can help folks. So here it is. I don't expect you all to memorize this. It's not a script. It's a framework that can be helpful to us. So when we want to ask about suicide, so here's a way we can say this. So sometimes when people are experiencing whatever it is that the person is going through and feeling, however they might be feeling, sometimes some of those folks are having thoughts of suicide. Are you having thoughts of suicide? Or shorter version, oh, you mentioned you're going through a difficult moment. Are you having thoughts of suicide? So now we want to take a moment, because for so many people it is so hard to say those phrases. We're actually going to practice that here if you want to pair up or triple up. And all I want you to do right now is simply read the script. That's it. Just read the script. Let the words come out of your mouth, maybe for the first time ever, of saying such phrases as this. So just read the script, pair up, everyone gets a chance to say it. Go to it. All right, I'm sorry to say that I'm going to interrupt you all. Did each person get a chance to say that? Maybe for the first time ever in your life. So just quickly, from one or two people, how did that feel to say it? How did it feel to say those words? Anyone? Can I see a hand? No one's, there we are. So you actually, first of all, you're practiced at asking directly. You've already done that before. And that even as that's the case, that you fear that you might be planting the seed, as if someone would say, gee, I hadn't thought of that before. Thanks for the suggestion. And it is hard. And then, of course, if people do say yes to that, it's like, now what? Although we'll get to a few steps for that, a very simple version. Anyone else, how did it feel to hear those words asked of us? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Here's a... She asked and you felt that she cared. Wonderful. That's what we like to hear, that there is the care. Do you know what? Actually, for the sake of time, you can go home and do the practice exercises. The next slides are there. Practice number 2, practice number 3. We'll let you go do that at home for our lack of time that I'm going to march on here. So that next part, when we ask directly about thoughts of suicide, and we might get a yes answer, We want to be helpful. We want to express care by whatever means fits for us. So for an example, I'm here for you. Provide active listening, express empathy, stay calm, if at all possible. Remain patient, be comfortable with uncertainty. The goal is not to fix every problem instantaneously. The goal is to help folks stay alive so that they can then, one by one, sort of address whatever are the challenges of their lives. Believe in the capacity for change, absolutely. Next step, reach out. Let's find help for you. Let's make sure you're safe. Now here's just a very quick rough and ready of how to safety plan. There are many different ways and many different levels of that, but there is actually a smartphone app. There are several of them, and we're here suggesting you can download them, and that is one of them is called Safety Plan, and that's what it looks like. There's another one that's called My 3. That's what it looks like. Here's the 6-step safety plan developed by Stanley and Brown. I think it's a great list, but for the sake of time, I'll let you read that and study it on those apps. Following up. This is another add-on that's newly a part of the draft statewide suicide prevention plan. I think it's great. I mean, we do it all the time at the Crisis Center, but it's nice to emphasize for the general population as well. And that is, can we follow up? Can we talk again? So calling, texting, for those of you who would know people personally, visit. We don't do that at the Crisis Center, but we do follow-ups in terms of calls. So these are the steps. Look, listen, ask directly about suicide, express care, reach out, follow up. Again, third-party concerns, I already mentioned, we're ready to help and coach anyone about how to do this. Just call us at 211. Outreach and training, again, just putting another promotion. Now, protective factors, reducing risk. If I can take a moment with this, I think it's a nice lead-in to our next part, the next couple hours, about what we're about here at this forum. And that is identifying needs in the community and what helps folks in their difficulties. What helps an individual, what helps a community. So effective clinical care for mental health, physical health, substance abuse, whatever the major areas of struggle in someone's life, if those exist in a community, then that's helpful. The question is, do we have enough? Well, we never have enough. And how can we develop more? Easy access to a variety of clinical interventions. Ongoing relationships with medical care and mental health service providers, strong connections to family and community support. Now, I always like to add, sometimes, for whatever reasons, the families aren't as helpful as we'd like them to be or as we need them to be. Or sometimes folks aren't as well connected to community support yet. Our task is to help folks to find those sources of support. Support for help seeking. I think this is so great. I'll bet everyone in this room is supportive. Not everyone is. So someone is expressing a need, and sometimes the response of others is, are you crazy? What's your problem? Or if it's an ongoing issue that has not yet finally been resolved, some people say, are you not over that yet? Aren't you done yet? Isn't that working yet? That does not qualify as support for help seeking. When anyone seeks any support, ideally the goal would be, that's great, that's wonderful. I hope that that can be helpful to you. Restricted access to highly lethal means of suicide. We have here even folks, I think, at one of the tables with some gun locks, actually, something like that. Skills in problem solving, conflict resolution, nonviolent handling of disputes, cultural and religious beliefs that discourage suicide and support self-preservation. I believe this can be double-edged. On one hand, it's great and wonderful about promoting life and values against attempting suicide. On the other hand, sometimes when folks are involved in groups that have this value, they're hesitant to share their thoughts of suicide or their struggles. And so it's just wonderful that there's a wide variety of groups and agencies and different, any of us that are available in a non-judgmental, very supportive, stigma-reducing way. And of course, high self-esteem. High self-esteem can be developed in many, many ways. One of the ways is just the mere fact that we are here providing services to folks in need. If people know that there are people who care, that helps them with their esteem. And we want to help them with that, help them to stay safe and stay alive. And I think we're ready for the next part.
All right, thank you, Scott, Tom, and Graham and Isla, who previously presented. We're gonna switch up our agenda a bit. And actually, instead of doing our small group discussions, if the group here would feel better, we can break for lunch, depending on what everyone's input is. I know it sounds like there's a few people have said that it's getting a little later and maybe lunch is preferred before the small group discussions. Yes? Is that the general consensus? All right. So we have lunch coming up. Before we get up for lunch, we're actually going to have the food that's going to be brought in, and people can walk up. There's a variety of different meat sandwiches as well as vegetarian options, and some snacks and drinks for that. But before we break out for lunch, we're going to take a moment to just ask all of the CBOs to just maybe introduce yourself, just your name and then the name of your agency. And during our lunch portion, we're really going to encourage everyone to take some time and just network, go around and visit. We did have someone here from the VA. He had to leave a little early, but he left some resources out on his table over there, and part of what he has are gun locks that are part of what the VA provides. So there's a lot of helpful resources at the various resource tables, so please take some time to visit, talk with them. If there was questions that you didn't get a chance to ask someone, maybe during this time you can connect with them as well. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with introducing service providers.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Blum from the Rainbow Community Center. We are located in Concord and Todos Santos Plaza. We offer a variety of programs, including clinical services, older adult programs, youth programs. We also have a training department, and we provide emergency housing for LGBTQ transitional age youth. So please stop by and some of our material. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole Sue, and I'm here with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And our main goal is gun violence prevention in all of its forms. And beyond fighting for common sense gun legislation, another big way that we work to reduce gun violence is through 2 educational programs that are designed to be presented to adults. The first is called Be Smart, and it's basically the idea behind it is with gun ownership comes great responsibility. And so our messaging is to be sure to secure and lock your guns safely, model proper gun behavior, ask. So if you're sending your child over to a friend's house to play, ask if they own guns and how they're stored. Recognize suicidal tendencies or signs, and tell someone if something looks suspicious or seems off. The other program is called Speak for Safety, and that is our program that's designed to educate people on the fact that California has a gun violence restraining law or red flag law. It's interesting because somebody asked if there was a correlation with gun suicide deaths starting around 2015, and ironically this law passed in 2014, so it could be hopefully part of that. But basically the law allows anyone who is concerned of a family member that they might pose harm to themselves or others, and they know that they own or have access to firearms, you can file a petition to have the firearms temporarily removed from that person to protect any potential harm from happening. So that's it.
Hi, my name is Amelia, and I'm from the Hume Center. The Hume Center is Contra Costa Behavioral Health Service Department, offers psychotherapy and case management, and operates a partial hospitalization program and 2 community support programs. Services available in multiple languages.
Hi, I'm Johanna Navarro Perez, and we're here from Seneca's Mobile Response Team. We are a program that's been running in this county for 18 years. We provide community-based crisis support services to families experiencing mental health crises. About 40% of our calls are strictly suicide risk, self-harm. The remainder are family conflict calls. While we can't serve everybody in the county, we always pick up the phone and we can always refer families out to more appropriate resources. Please come up and take a magnet. They're really fun.
Hi, I'm Melissa. We're here representing Discovery Counseling Center. We're located in Danville. We offer various programs, including groups for elderly, a lot of teen groups, including processing groups and mindfulness-based stress reduction. We also have marriage and family therapists on staff that work with individuals, couples, and families for short-term or long-term therapy. We do work with some insurances, and we also provide a sliding scale.
I think you've heard enough about the Contra Costa Crisis Center. So,
Hi, I'm Wanda Davis. I'm from First 5 Contra Costa, and we provide services and resource supports to families and children from 0 to 5. One of the things that we've been working on is a trauma-informed practice of care curriculum for trainers in our communities to make sure that they understand the impact of trauma and how that affects children and their families. So please look at our information here. We also are supporting, helping with the next upcoming forum, which is the Early Childhood Mental Health Community Forum, which will be on a Saturday, November 2nd. We're hoping to be able to get more families out to that date if it's on a weekend. So hopefully we'll see some of you there.
and here's some materials from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Graham Wiseman, and with me is Shelly G. She reaches out to our API community and focuses on South County. And we got Cody, who's brand new on board, but will be focusing on our TAY community. We were actually at DVC yesterday doing a tabling event and speaking to their Associated Student Union. So we are out in the community. We have our NAMI Walk coming up this weekend on Saturday at Todos Santos Plaza. We invite you to come out, learn more about the resources and more about what NAMI does.
Hi, my name is Xiaoli Ji. I want to add a little. It is we do have a volunteer training right now, so anybody want to join us, please come to here to sign up. And we need the volunteers to help the community. And also we do have English, Spanish, and Mandarin resource and classes. They're all free, so come here to get more information.
Hi, I'm Joe Bruno. I'm representing Delta Peers. It's a brand new peer support organization that's starting to bubble up in Antioch. We're specifically in Antioch, and we're looking to take to the streets from Martinez all the way out to Discovery Bay. And our main goal is to bring, we are invoking the spirit of what we can achieve. And by doing that, we're transcending mental health along the Delta line. So we have information here about peer support and how to get involved in East County. Joe Bruno with Delta Peers.
Okay, and so here's the table for the veteran crisis line. That gentleman had to leave earlier, but you're more than welcome to stop by and gather resources.
Hi, my name is Neil Gerstner. My colleagues Jennifer Mitchell and Jacqueline Mertz are volunteers with Stand for Families Free of Violence. Stand is Contra Costa County's only agency that deals strictly with and exclusively with domestic violence. And we provide, in that capacity, the full range of resources for people who are either in unhealthy and potentially dangerous relationships or people who have left those relationships and are looking for support, which would include such things as confidential location emergency housing, transitional housing, a hotline which provides resources 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, therapy for children free of charge, counseling, support groups, once again the full gamut of resources for people who are in potentially dangerous relationships or who have left those relationships.
Hi, good afternoon. Natalie Demijan, Mobile Crisis Response Team with Contra Costa County Behavioral Health.
Hi, I'm Eileen Colorado. I'm a mental health clinical specialist with the Mobile Crisis Response Team. And I just want to let you know our team is available from 8:30 to 10:30 in case you have a crisis or you know somebody who is suicidal, homicidal, or is gravely disabled. We can respond out with police and de-escalate or assess for a 5150 hold.
Hi, I'm Andrea Garcia. I'm a community support worker. I'm a person with lived experience. I'm a peer.
Hi, my name is Leila Clark. I'm also a community support worker, and I also have lived experience.
I'd also like to take this moment, if there's any service providers out here in the resource tables that would like to introduce themselves or just mention maybe what your agency does, if there's no one available. Okay. One thing I'd like to cover once it's time to break for lunch, I'm going to ask all of the resource tables, if you have more than one person, if you can maybe take turns getting your lunch so that hopefully one person can remain at your resource table, possibly to answer questions or help be there and answer questions or give out your materials while the other person grabs lunch and then kind of switch off.
My name is Kimberly Krish. I'm with the George and Cynthia Miller Wellness Center Behavioral Health. We are located on the hospital campus in Martinez. We're an outpatient, short-term behavioral clinic, meaning that people who are having a crisis, who are not connected to services, who want to come in and are interested in talking with a psychiatrist to discuss medication, get on medication, and identify other service needs would come in. Short term is we hold a patient for approximately 2 months, and what our goal is to have the individual stabilized according to the psychiatrist and then connect them in the community to longer term services. We are walk-in. There are no appointments, only for return patients. So our hours are 12 to 9, Monday through Friday, and we are open on Saturdays from 8:30 to 4:15 or when the doors lock. Thank you.
Hi, over here on the other side of the room. Sarah Marsh, Contra Costa Interfaith Housing. We provide support services including licensed mental health support for formerly homeless individuals and families throughout the county, and we also provide the housing. And I'm also a CPAW member, and I really encourage people to attend the CPAW membership meetings. They really influence how the funding gets distributed and utilized. So it's a real deal, the CPAW thing. And my colleague here.
Hi, my name is Brian Forrester, mental health specialist with the Forensics Clinic under Behavioral Health, and I'm involved with the COCO Lead Plus project, which is a Prop 47 funded behavioral health diversion program. It's focused in Antioch for people who have had a couple of been arrested for a couple low-level offenses and aren't necessarily getting picked up by probation and as a result getting access to services. And we work with a wide range of agencies in trying to divert these folks out of the law enforcement system and into the behavioral health system, which includes providing housing, which is currently provided by CCIH.
Hi, my name is Alejandro Escovedo. I come from Fred Finch Youth Center. We provide services for transitional age youth, 18 to 26, youth with severe mental illness. We support them with mental health and coordination of services.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hello, my name is Robert Thigpen. I'm the Adult Mental Health Family Services Coordinator for Contra Costa Behavioral Health Services, and I represent the family voice in administration at Behavioral Health, and I also oversee our adult mental health family support workers in our adult clinics.
Hi, my name is Gloria Menjivar, and I'm a family support worker at West County Adult Mental Health. So, and also, I am a facilitator for mental health first aid trainings. All of those organizations that are interested on a certification in the mental health first aid training, they can contact me and schedule a training, 8 hours training is the certification. So, but I'm in West County Adult Mental Health.
Hello, my name is Renee Owens. I'm a CSW at West County Adult Behavior Health, and I do a lot of things. I can have you on here for a long time, but what I specialize in is keeping people out of the hospital and activities and education. I have a lot of individuals that I have enrolled in Contra Costa College and continuing their education and just upping their life skills. That's what I specialize in.
Hi, my name is Celine. I'm here with the Latina Center. We are an organization that targets to help women and families. All of our services are in Spanish. We deal with issues regarding domestic violence. We also have leadership programs for both young teens and also women up to the ages of, I believe, 60 and older. So we have a lot of programs, including also parenting classes and class support groups for domestic violence survivors also. Am I forgetting? That's all.
Hello, my name is Alicia Austin Townsend, and I am here representing Mental Health Systems. We currently operate the Action Team, which is the Assisted Outpatient Treatment Program, serving those at risk and meeting criteria for Laura's Law. We also are operating the Central FSP program as well as a vocational program.
Hello, my name is Christy Harrington-Sai, and I'm a counselor at Diablo Valley College. We have a Pleasant Hill campus and San Ramon campus represented here. We have very short-term, like brief therapy on campus, but we're always looking to develop stronger relationships with community organizations for long-term referrals for our students. So if you have people who you're working with who you know attend DVC, then you can approach me and we can coordinate on how to streamline the referral process.
Hi, I'm Matt White, Medical Director for Psychiatric Services for Outpatient Behavioral Health, as well as the hospital-based services. Also, my colleague Suzanne Tavano, the Behavioral Health Director, I know she really wanted to be here. She has to be in Sacramento today. So.
Hi, my name is Sharichi Dancy. I'm a case manager with Contra Costa Health Plan. We case manage a variety of clients, adult clients who have psychosocial issues or social determinants of health, whether that's mental health, chronic illnesses, issues with seeing their doctor. Referrals are easy. You can have any county patient ask their provider for a referral to Contra Costa Health Plan. Thank you.
Are there any others?
Hi, I'm Roberto Roman. I'm a community support worker team lead with Behavioral Health Services Office for Consumer Empowerment. We have several stigma and discrimination reduction programs, and our office also facilitates the SPIRIT program, which trains clients and family members to be peer and family support specialists in the county system and also at community-based organizations.
Thank you. I'm Michael Peterson, along with Janet Costa. We are the SPIRIT instructors at Contra Costa College. We work for Contra Costa Behavioral Health Office for Consumer Empowerment, 9-unit certificate course offering peer support services to family members and consumers of the behavioral health system. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellie Shergel. I'm the program supervisor for older adult mental health. We have several programs, including an intensive care management program for older adults 60 plus with severe and chronic mental illness, an impact depression care program which provides psychotherapy to adults 55 and up with mild to moderate depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Also a senior peer counseling program that provides lay counseling to adults 55 and up with mild mental health concerns. And we're also involved in the Elder Abuse Prevention Project, which is a collaboration with APS and several other community-based organizations like STAND and Senior Legal Services and the Family Justice Center, and a few more for anyone who is 65 and up and a victim of abuse or neglect.
All right, are there any others? Okay, so we're gonna break for lunch. We will reconvene at let's say 1:05. If, like I said, the research table, if you have more than one person, can you please have one person stay behind, maybe just to offer support at the table and just take turns. So it's 12:30 right now. We will reconvene at 1:05. Thank you. We're actually just going to check in and see if any of the tables or anyone here would like to share any of your thoughts during your small group discussions, or in general, maybe maybe 2 or 3 of you that can share any thoughts on today onto the forum. Anyone would like to provide any input? Anyone? Here? Mike.
So hello everybody. At our table, we would like to see more peer support practices in law enforcement, specifically the first responders, providing comfort and care in regards to the developmental disabilities youth that we serve, more stress reduction groups that promote wellness and health, talk groups for individuals with disabilities, and overall increased training for adults for one-on-one peer support to understand our youth and to relate to them on a level that does not cause them stress.
Thank you, Mike. Kimberly?
I'm going to share one idea that we had as a table group that I thought was really powerful, because when we talked about number 4 and ideas, everyone came up with an idea of a speaker that they had heard that had a very powerful message. One individual attempted suicide but was helped by a policeman, didn't know it was a message. Another one was a woman, and it was a domestic violence situation where she was at risk of being killed, and her husband was a policeman. But the point is that we have people, and she's a professional basketball player. She tried to report it, and they didn't believe her because her husband was a policeman. But these are powerful messages that are inspirational, that help to communicate that people are vulnerable in vulnerable situations, and a lot of people don't recognize it. And if they could share it with audiences, they might be able to hear that they too might resonate with the message. They too might reach out for help. And so when we talked about where could these speakers speak, and it could be in anyone's community. It could be churches coming together saying we'd like to put an event on and get 3 or 4 churches together, but we can all make that happen. And then the last component of it is, if we got people together who are going to hear a powerful message, we'd like to have all the people in the back of the room who are at the tabling. We'd like to have providers there so that when you hear the message, you have your friends there, you have possible service providers there to hand out valuable information and make connections.
Thank you.
Hi, we had lots of good stuff at our table, but I just wanted to make one input, and that is it was kind of highlighted this morning that social media, which is a relatively recent phenomena, is a significant factor in isolating our kids, and the suggestion was made to actually focus attention on using social media to educate and train and reverse that process.
I'll talk about our conversation at our table and invite my colleagues at the table to add, because I'm just going to try and summarize. But basically, it was a really dynamic conversation with a lot of creative ideas, and in summary, it felt like we talked about populations that we were focusing on, and they included youth, homeless, people managing mental illness, and seniors. And the through line for what we kept coming up with one way or another was community. Community, connectedness, healthy connections, restrictions on social media for youth, community living structures for homeless or seniors who are isolated, but the whole world of being able to connect, and in a diverse community that included people with lived experience and people with licenses and experience that could also contribute from that perspective. So that's what I thought we talked about. You guys want to add anything?
Yeah, there was a great discussion at this table with lots of input from so many people, so I won't be able to capture everything, but a couple of things came up. There was quite some issues regarding how the questions were phrased. Just to note, some people said number 2 was missing out other suggestions like housing and other things that put people at risk, and services to address those, housing, substance use. And the question number 3, what are some of the practices in your culture that promote health and wellness? That culture seemed to raise a lot of issues about what was meant and what they were trying to get to. That was a tough one for us. But on the positive suggestions, we had a very good suggestion about incoming students into school. It's often rah, 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 you're here now into school and you're going on to this, but not actually addressing the real issues that kids need to deal with, whether it's drugs or peer pressure or social media or whatever. That was a big issue. School safety was a big issue as well, and being, safe in the school, a lot of issues around that and how to handle it. When we talked about the resources, there was a distinct lack of resources for the West County in particular, and that was quite troubling. Came up quite a bit at our table. The only other real issues that we had there was that we felt there should be a lot more resources available for people, and I think that was about it. Unless anybody else at the table wants to say anything, I think we're good. Thank you.
Hello. We talked, one of the main things that we talked about was having training available for the police department, when there's a 5150, so having more training for them so they can talk to the clients who are in crisis. And that discussion kind of went into a more in-depth kind of transition, like if somebody's released from a 5150 case, and there was the discussion on how that process was and what would be the best practices. And we talked about training, and we mentioned peer respites, because I'm going to just throw that out everywhere I go. For that transition, at that pre-crisis, to have peer respites and have peer support. Another thing that we talked about was the school system and how the particular is called Teen Esteem. So they're working with students and peer supports, and so these things are they're starting to happen and they're working, and we're getting to the students for training and education. So that was pretty much our discussion, bringing more training and awareness and advocacy is where our discussion was.
All right. Oh, Wanda.
At our table, we also talked about having a multi-level approach from prevention to intervention, so that there's work that can be done before we're in a suicide crisis, and to think about what that could look like in terms of education and support for individuals and families. We were talking about the fact that one of the critical things that came up in the presentations was the importance of relationships and having a caring relationship with the individual to help to buffer and provide protective factors against some of the things that folks are dealing with in terms of stress. So we wanted to emphasize that. We also talked about developmental disabilities and families, that there's not really a good support system in the mental health system for them, that they're pushed between the disability system and the mental health system. So we'd like to see more in that area, and also more in the area for young children and families, that when a parent commits suicide or something happens, it affects not only that individual, but all the individuals within that household. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? I'd like to share something from my group. I was in a group, and a couple things that came up was the standardized risk assessment developed for suicide, gauging people's maybe suicidality or suicidality ideation. Another thing that was emphasized was having this type of event in other regions of the county, and also having, just in general, having support from other agencies and making it be maybe based to a culture or group. And then specifically some specified training for LGBTQ and transgender groups, as well as as well as offering, being aware that for youth, certain times of the year are a bit more stressful. Like, for example, if there's finals or if they're transitioning on from middle school into high school, et cetera, like that, holding space for people to be able to, or youth to be able to connect and share with others, as well as the holidays, maybe for people that might not have a family or people to share with. And then specialized outreach to people in homeless shelters or the homeless population, and being mindful that maybe not everybody might have someone that they're able to connect to. Yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and move on now, and we wanted to kind of share ways that you can stay involved if you are, if you like this event, or in general, if you've been to other community forums that we've held. We had the last one on supportive housing, and that was at Contra Costa College. Our next one is going to be November 2nd, and that's on early childhood mental health, and that will be in Pittsburgh. We're partnering up with First Five here. We definitely would like to encourage all of you to stay involved, and a way you can stay involved is by sending an email to the MHSA email, which is mhsa@cchealth.org. You can ask to be put on an email list, and you'll get reminder emails of the forums like this, as well as our stakeholder, which are just community meetings where we have various people participate. Some of them are service providers, people within our county system, our community-based organizations, people in the community that just are passionate about mental health support, and just a lot of people that are coming together really to try to work on specific groups. Some of the focus groups we have is children, teens, and young adults. We have older adult. We have a suicide prevention committee that meets. CPAW, which is our general CPAW meeting. It's the first meeting of every month, and that's the main meeting where most of these other sub meetings or subcommittees will actually go and report out. So if you're interested in what's going on in our system, that's a way you can kind of come to one of the meetings, and then you'll learn about other meetings. And if you have a specific passion, that's a way that you can get involved. We also have our MHSA office line, which is up there, 925-957-2617. You can call in if you don't have access to email or prefer to just call in. You can visit our MHSA website. So all of the materials that we discussed here, most of them are posted online, as well as a recap of today's forum. The video will be available as well as our 3-year plan, the service directories that are in your trifolds. There's electronic versions of those for East, West, Central County, and just a lot of helpful resources that you can gather on there. And then just CPAW specifically, I want to highlight CPAW. So the Consolidated Planning Advisory Work Group, which is the folder in the brochure that's in your folder, is a way that people in the community can also have direct input and dialogue with our behavioral health director, who usually or regularly attends those meetings. And that's a way that we get to speak and have a voice your concerns, voice your passions, and then also just be there to participate and advocate, as well as gather information from the Contra Costa County Behavioral Health System. So we really encourage everyone to attend. There's many CPAW members here that are present as well, and a lot of those are also some of our volunteers tonight. So we have the input and evaluation forms, which in most of the folders are blue, except for the Spanish language folder. I believe that one is a white paper, but we really would appreciate everyone to fill those out. If you have input, please provide it on there. If you don't have input, please flip it around and actually complete the survey, because that helps us gauge if there's things that we can do to better prepare for future forums as well. And then I guess, Jennifer, I don't know if there's any other information you'd like to share in regards to the Suicide Prevention Committee.
Oh yeah, just a quick reminder, there is a countywide suicide prevention committee. It meets the 4th Friday of the month at our MHSA office in Martinez. You can contact me directly if you're interested, or there's information on the on the MHSA website. So this is open to the public. Anyone is welcome to attend. It's kind of an interagency collaborative type of meeting that we facilitate with the Crisis Center. So just putting that out there. So we're getting ready to wrap it up. We're going to move into public comment. So those green cards that were just put to your table, if you have a public comment that you'd like to make, you can write it down there. I just want to mention one other quick thing. Before you leave, on your way out, you've got those 5 dots in the red dots in your folder. We're going to ask you to vote. There's 14 different items that are on the wall outside by where you registered. These are different service needs that were kind of identified through a needs assessment that we did at the beginning of this 3-year cycle, and we like to track how important they are to people. So we're going to ask you to vote and help us prioritize those. That's the last thing as you leave. So thank you.
Okay, and so we're going to go ahead and move on to public comment. So public comment is where anyone that's here can give their public comment, whether it's up here at our podium, or if you prefer to stay at your table, I can bring the mic to you. And we ask that everyone try to be mindful of 2 minutes in case we have many that would like to give their comment. We also would like for everybody to fill out one of these green forms. If you need one and you didn't receive one, just raise your hand and we'll come around. If anybody has any, please also raise your hand so that we can collect them. There's one over there in the back, I believe.
Did you have a form? Oh, you did one?
Any public comment? I think this might be a first because we usually have people that always want to comment. You can also fill out a public comment form if you prefer to not get on the mic. We can read it off if that's an option. Yes.
I'll be the first. So, hi, Joe Bruno again. I am a suicide attempt survivor. I've attempted twice in my lifetime. And to be here today, I just need to let every one of you know that I'm grateful to see all of your faces. This discussion is very heavy. But because of my own personal lived experience and my story, that's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's the reason why I'm here. It's the reason we're all here, I think. So I just wanted to take that time to just say thanks. And peer respites, we need more. Okay.
Thank you for sharing, Joe. Any other public comments? Oh, okay.
They're fading. All right. Well, let's see. Okay, so we're pretty much winding down. We're going to close with a video. I first want to thank all of you for participating in this forum today. This is incredible. All the questions, all the input, all the information that you gave us today, just by being here and showing that you care about this topic, it's really, it just is really important, and we really just want to appreciate all of you. We'd also like to recognize the Contra Costa Crisis Center for being our partners in hosting this event. Leslie, Scott, Tom, thank you guys so much. Audrey Montana from the MHSA team is out there, but she's been working on this for weeks. And our other presenters too, Supervisor Anderson, Isla Castleberry, and Graham Wiseman. Thank you so much, all of you. Appreciate you. So Supervisor Anderson mentioned a program that she's involved with called Directing Change, and this is a statewide student film competition that's done every year. And students are asked to submit a 1-minute video that they create, that they produce, they star in, they write. And it's either, the topics are either around mental health awareness or suicide prevention. So we'd like to close our event today by showing you a film that was made this year in this year's contest by a group of students at Freedom High School. And that's a high school in Oakley. And they were one of the, I don't think they were the first place winner, but I think they
were
it
honorable mention.
Honorable mention. So, and this group, they were able to present this film to the Board of Supervisors this week in recognition of Suicide Prevention Month. So that was really cool. So I think Leslie's queuing it up. All right. I think that about does it. Audrey said to mention that this cup, this is a really nice cup. It was left at the registration table, if this belongs to anybody. You, great.
And also, just another reminder again, as we're closing up, the 5 dots in your folder, please use those on the way out against this wall here. There are 14 different sheets that are up on the wall, and we encourage you to use your 5 dots in any way you choose. You can put all 5 on one, you can put 3 on one and then 2 on another, but it is pretty much to vote or prioritize the service needs in regards to some of the mental health services that are available. Thank you again for coming to today's forum, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.